solving radical equations today. Sounds like a fun lesson, doesn't it? This is the exact opposite of solving quadratic equations. I think you'll like it, a lot less to it. Let's start off here with example 1. We got the square root of x minus 10 equals 0. We want to solve this equation. That is, find all values of x that make the equation true. So the first thing we're going to do is get the absolute value quantity, the square root quantity by itself. And we can do that by adding 10 to both sides. Okay. Now, here's where the new thing kicks in. What are we going to do to get rid of that square root sign? What's the opposite of taking the square root of something? Well, the answer to that question is to square it. Okay, so the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root of it. The opposite of the square root of something is the square of it. Square root of x times square root of x is just x, and 10 times 10 is 100, and that's our answer. Check our answer. Square root of 100 minus 10 should be equal to 0 if 100 is the solution. And it is. So isolate the square root quantity and then square both sides. This one's got a little bit more going on. Same rules apply. Let's add 2 to both sides. Get the square root quantity by itself, 3x plus 1 equals 8. And then this is the point where we need to square both sides. So we got the square root of 3x plus 1 times the square root of 3x plus 1, which is quite simply 3x plus 1. And 8 times 8 is 64. At this point, we got rid of the square root symbol. We're just solving a two-step equation, which you learned how to solve, well, probably last year or in 6th grade, but at the very least this year in chapter 3. Subtract 1 from both sides. Divide both sides by 3. X is 21. We'll check this answer as well. Square root of 3 times 21 plus 1. That square root sign is a grouping symbol, so you have to do everything inside that grouping symbol first. In other words, multiply and then add. Because 6 equals 6, 21 must be a solution of the equation. Well, no first step as far as getting the square root symbol by itself because it already is. So we can go right to step 2, which is to square both sides of the equation. Square root of 4x minus 3 times the square root of 4x minus 3 is 4x minus 3, and x times x is x squared. Well, looky there, we've got a quadratic equation. So we've got options at this point on how to solve it. But because there's a b term, we have to get 0 on one side of the equation. So we'll subtract 4x and add 3 to both sides. And now we've got an option. We could factor this equation. In other words, since the lead coefficient is 1, look for factors of 3 that add up to -4. Or we could use the quadratic formula. This is factorable, so I'm going to factor it. -3 times -1 is +3. -3 plus -1 is -4. Then use the zero product property, and our solutions are 1 and -3. Check our answer in case you're not believing me yet that this system works. Plug 1 in for both x's. Multiply, subtract, and take the square root. So 1 works. Let's see if 3 works. Plug 3 in for both x's. Multiply, subtract, take the square root. So we can see that 3 also works. Okay, this looks pretty simple. It looks a lot like example 1. Let's start off by subtracting 9 from both sides so that we can get the square root quantity by itself. Next, we'll square both sides to get rid of the square root sign. Square root of x times the square root of x is x, and negative 9 times negative 9 is 81, so it seems that 81 is our solution. Let's check our answer. Square root of 81 plus 9 should be equal 0 if 81 is a solution. But we've got an issue here. Square root of 81 plus 9 does not equal 0. That means 81 is not a solution, because we have no solution here. And in reality, as soon as I see the square root of something equaling a negative number, I know there's no solution. You can't take the square root of a number and get a negative. Square root of something always has to be a positive. And lastly, something a little different here. The geometric mean of x and 4 is 10. What is the value of x? Well, let's not worry about what geometric mean is right now. You can concentrate on that more when you get to geometry next year or even advanced algebra. But let's at least give you the formula for computing geometric mean. Geometric mean is the square root of the product of two values. So if given two numbers, you would multiply them together and take the square root of their product to get the geometric mean. So we're told that the geometric mean of 4 and x is 10. The geometric mean 10 is the square root of 4 times x. So 4 and x, their geometric mean is 10. It's a pretty easy setup, and then it's just a matter of solving the equation. So square both sides, and then divide both sides by 4. So the geometric mean of 4 and 25 is 10. All right, so we got a series of U-try-its. On each one, you can press pause, and or you can just try the whole set while you've got it paused, and then go ahead and press play, and all my solutions will come after. All right, here we go. Number 1. Let's add 6 to both sides, and then square both sides, and then divide both sides by 2. It does work. Square root of 36 is 6. Minus 6 is 0. All right, number 2. Let's subtract 7 from both sides because you got to get the square root by itself. Square both sides, and then divide both sides by 5. They get a little tougher when you got x inside and outside of the radical. Same procedure applies. Let's square both sides. This is a quadratic, so let's put it in standard form. You've got options now. You can factor it if it's factorable. You could use the quadratic formula. This one's factorable. The solutions are 1 and 2 using the zero product property. Subtract 144 from both sides. How can you take the square root of something and have it equal a negative number? You can't. So at this point, I don't even need to go any further. If I square both sides, I'll get a solution, but it'll be what we call an extraneous solution. So don't want that. So we'll just stop right here and say no solution. Remember, geometric mean is the square root of the product of two numbers. So if they say the geometric mean is 30, then that would be the square root of the product of 6 and x. We square both sides and divide both sides by 6. All right, so something very new for you in today's lesson as far as solving radical equations, but not a difficult process if you practice a little bit. So rewatch the examples if you need to. The work in red is the new stuff, and Good luck. Come in with any questions tomorrow.